I should use my microphone. This top, it itches too much. I want to get rid of it. Oh, now it looks like I'm naked. Do I want to look naked? Yeah, I think so. Okay. Today we will talk about thinktober, which is a huge collaboration in our witchy community to talk about the importance of critical thinking, which is very difficult in this community. So I thought I'm making this video about how to work critically in a more academic sense on how to work with resources like books and how to look at them from a critical, more academic standpoint in determining if what you're reading is good and reliable information or not. Why is it so difficult in our community to have a strong base of critical thinking, which is something you should have in general life, I think, because it comes in handy in many different aspects of life. In the occult and magic community, the data we are working with is very difficult to scientifically determine. There's not a lot of scientific research about it. There's not a lot of data you can take into account. Science and magic really does not work together as of yet in a harmonious way at all. Now, most of the traditions we work with are historical flavored, I think, or have their origins in history, right? So we have oral traditions, which are all the stories, the poems, the songs, the prayers we have in our community. These vary very much from tradition to tradition, depending on where you grew up, where your ancestry lies. Then we have the written traditions, which is all the books, the grimoires, the calendars, biographies, memoirs, Annalen, which I don't know the English term for, Inschriften, which I also don't know the English term for. Great! Then we have visual traditions, that's art, you know, paintings, cave art, sculptures, Kleinkunst, monuments, topographische Darstellungen. So all of these form the base of what we are working with, right? And it's very difficult to determine the accuracy of these things because they have been passed down for many generations across cultures, morphed into new things and been lost through different time periods, right? So it's very difficult. Where do you start? Where do you stop? What is reliable and what is not? That rhymed. So much lies in history and was shaped by history. So it's very hard to translate it into our modern world. Like even the neo-paganism or New Age movement, their roots are based in history. So at a point you end up with hard to acquire knowledge from the past and modern people trying to decipher it in some way, shape or form. And these people are the people most of the witches and practitioners learn from, right? Because it's super difficult to learn from the source material. So most of our knowledge we are taught or we read about is secondary literature from people who are trying to decipher what are the historical contexts are saying, what are the historical records are saying, and then they try to decipher and translate it into our modern point of view and modern language, and it's very difficult. How do you navigate through that, you know? So it's really important to think about this. Where is the things we're practicing, where are they coming from? And how did we come from? Which example will I use? The Celts, you know? The Celts. How did the information, how the Celts practiced from 270 before Christ went on its way, got lost through time, and up in the 21st century, now people are trying to practice Celtic magic. It's insane, right? So I think it's very important to to think critically about this. So yeah, that's why I'm saying it's so important for people to to cite the sources, so we can understand, where did you get this from? How did we end up from here over 2,000 years later? How did we end up here then? With all these difficulties, we have also this unverified personal gnosis against verified personal gnosis, right? It's a very difficult breeding ground to work with, honestly, and critical thinking is very essential to work and move through this community. Now, what is verified personal gnosis? That is different things that have been verified by the majority of the community. Many people seem to have the problem that they take their unverified personal gnosis and pass them off as verified personal gnosis, which is very troubling, because you should make this differentiation between the two. Now, this is where I think most of the fights I have seen stem from, that people said, hey, this goddess symbolizes war, and then the other side was like, no, this goddess symbolizes love. What are you talking about? And then somebody else was like, yeah, for me, the goddess symbolizes purity. And then you could say, what does history say about this goddess? And historical context could say, this goddess stands for war. This is actually something that is confirmed in historical records. But also that this goddess is the protector of women. So it could also be viewed from a purity standpoint, or even for a love kind of standpoint. So all of them could be possible. And people were like, no, I'm right, no, I'm right, no, I'm right. And nobody came to a consensus and to a point where they were like, hey, this is my personal experience, this is your personal experience. It's very interesting to hear from each other's different perspectives. Maybe I can learn something new from my own perspective. That's why it's important to use critical thinking and be like, hey, I will look at this from a critical and objective standpoint first and see what I can find, what this information brings me. Now, so far so good. How you experience your craft is very, very personal and subjective, so it's very hard to kind of question that. It turns super personal in seconds if you challenge someone's beliefs, and people feel attacked like right away, because spirituality is so important and personal for most of us that it's really difficult to keep an objective standpoint when your views get challenged, especially when they're rooted in your own heritage or history or culture. So it's very difficult to come together and talk about different topics from different angles in a civil way, you know. Of course, these tips are optional. Everything I say in this video is something I think is important, but if you want to approach your witchy journey and knowledge and research like this, is up to you. First, you look at what can you find out about the author. What's the academic background? What's the occult background? What is the media background? Does this author publish a lot of books, and what kind of books? Where does the author publish these books? What tradition is this author coming from? Are there any interviews maybe? Are there any social media accounts you can check out? How do I get in contact with this author? Because honestly, if there's no way, in any way, shape or form, you can get into contact with an author, I'm questioning if this author is even real. Even if you use a pseudonym or a fake name to publish, you should still be reachable in some way, shape or form. Now, in this community, we do have a problem with AI generated authors, books and posts, so it's not too far-fetched to question if someone is real or not, right? What did they publish and when? Because if you have an author who publishes a lot of books on various different topics that have nothing to do with each other, I would question the information containing these books will be of high quality or be more of a watered down version. You could kind of find on the internet for free, because I have read books like this. Now, the difference between secondary literature and primary literature is that secondary literature is someone who took something from somewhere else and wrote it again in their own book, for example. So I could write a book and say everyone can be a psychic witch. Everyone can be one. Now, if I'm citing correctly, I would say I have this from Auryn. To find out why can everyone be a psychic witch and how do you get there, because all I said in my book was everybody can be a psychic witch and left it at that. And all of the questions that come with this statement are unanswered. But if you go into the primary resource, you can actually read about information that has not been answered by this one statement, which is a lot. Right? So the secondary literature would be my book where I write everybody can be a psychic witch. The primary literature would be this one. Now you should, in an ideal world, you should go to the primary literature and see what does the original author say. Secondary literature is a very good starting place in many cases. If you want to dive deeper into a topic, you should eventually end at the original source material. Sooner or later, this will lead you to historical text, which is very difficult to work with. Someone could write in their book, hey, this guy is green. And if they're working accurately, they will cite their source and be like, hey, I found this in this ancient book. Then you look at the ancient book and in there it says, this guy seemed to be green at first, but it was actually blue. Now, if you don't read the source material, you think, oh, this guy is green. The person says it, it's green. I mean, I'm not going to question it, right? I mean, this person wrote a book about it and wrote it into the book, so it needs to be true. If you read the source material, you find out, oh, actually, this guy is blue, and it was cited incorrectly. Or, which is even more likely, was it morphed into a specific statement to fit the author's narrative? Because that happens lots of time, that something is taken from somewhere else and morphed to fit the agenda of the person who is talking about the topic. So it's very important to think critically about this, to see what is the agenda of the person, where is this person coming from, to determine is this even correct or not. Because even in science, it happens a lot of times that things are morphed to fit the theory or agenda the scientists are trying to prove. So going back to the green and blue sky, you have two very different knowledge pieces about the same thing, right? So it's very important to work with the source material. And that's why it's important to cite your source material, you know, so people can nachvollziehen where you got the information from you're talking about. Now, if you say, the sky is blue, I read it in this ancient book, but for me the sky always felt more purple. This is completely accurate to say, right? You said what you read in the source material, and then you said what's your own personal experience with the sky. Completely okay to say it like this. Completely okay to write it in a book. But the differentiation between them and how you wrote it down makes all the difference. Now, if you look at a statement in a book and think critically about it, you can think about, hey, is this a personal reference? Is this personal experience, subjective experience? Or is this object experience the person took from somewhere else? And is the source of this cited somewhere? If it's not, that's very sad, honestly, because it's so much more work for the reader than to find out where this came from. Now, if you then decide to read about this topic from different resources, at a point you read enough to kind of confirm if this is valuable information or not, because you read enough. if something is cited, you can immediately go to the source and see where did this person take it from. Is it truth? Is it verified? Is it valuable information, right? Also, it's a good rule of thumb, especially in the beginning, if you have not read a lot, to cross-reference, what you read, what people say, what you saw on social media, especially. Cross-reference, 1, 2, 3 other sources you can pull up and check. What do other people say? What do other people think about this, or what do other people experience? I think then it's important to look at when did the author publish and what generation is this author from, because it really does change how and what they write. In scientific context, we say everything that's back 2 generations of scientists is questionable to use. You need to read it to know the history, the scientific history, where the views you have now and the data you have now, research point you have now came from, what it looked like before. It's very important also to still respect these people because they have paved the road for where you are now. So the age of the publishing should be kept in your mind when looking at how accurate and resourceful and useful something is in 2023. For example, I read a book once about shamanism, which is a complicated topic from the beginning, and the author used scientific theories from the 80s, long been debunked, long proven to be incorrect, and because this is my expertise, I knew it immediately that this information was wrong. And I was like so angry because I was like, how can you use these outdated scientific theories to kind of prove your agenda when they are long been debunked and known to be incorrect, right? So this happens a lot of times, and it's very hard to spot if you're not an expert at this specific field. And that's why I'm talking about this so much in this video, because it happens, it does happen, and it's very important, and critical thinking can help you, can guide you and assist you through this. Now, if you use resources from way back, like old or ancient grimoires, it's an entire different thing again, because it's so complicated to work with these. It takes a lot of time to get through them, to decipher them as well. This is again a different topic. How to work with historical text is, I think, very complicated and needs to be very thorough and carefully done. Now, it's also important in our community to look at the cultural background someone came from, because it shapes what they write about and how the text is flavored. Now, you can look at the publishing house, if it's a respected one or if it's like self-published. I want to take one book as an example, which I think did a beautiful job, or rather the author, and that is Laura Tempest Zarkroff. She has written multiple books. I have read some of them, and I want to take her book to kind of explain as an example what you can look at to determine if a resource you're working with is a good resource, and how you can work with the information inside of the book in a critical way to determine, is this good information, is this accurate information. Now, on her website, which I will link her, she has a YouTube channel, she has a website, she has an online shop. I will link everything down below. On her website we can find out quite a lot about her. She's an artist with a degree. She is a witch with 2 decades of experience. She's a performer and performed at various festivals. She is an author and has published more than one very successful book. There are different podcasts and interviews with her you can watch. She has a YouTube channel you can watch. So there's a lot of information surrounding this author you can look at and determine is this person real? First of all, respectable, or how do you say? Active and alive in the community. Is this person a good influence? And is this person knowledgeable? And in which part is this person knowledgeable? Now, for our example, Sigil Witchery. Beautiful book. I enjoyed it a lot. The author gives very interesting information I have not had read before. Some of it I have practiced myself, some of it I read somewhere before, but a lot of it I didn't, which for me marks a good book. Now, there is historical and archaeological information in this, which I absolutely love and I'm super excited about. Then there's unverified personal gnosis, and the author makes it very clear what this is. She shares a very personal side of her craft and shows a practical view into her path and into her craft, so you can understand the method she teaches better. And I think that's also very beautifully done. Now, she cites resources, which I think is beautiful. In the books I have read from her so far, this was done. There's a huge part in the section at the end of the book dedicated to the resources. Also, very beautifully, she encourages you to research more, a part of what she teaches. So she even gives you the resources or a look into possible resources to further enhance your knowledge into this topic, which is mind-blowingly good, honestly, because in this community we have people that stop you in your tracks and kind of put like these horse thingies on you and say, hey, this is how it works, this is how it's done, period, you know. No, hey, look outside of your own boundaries. Not boundaries, but the Tellerrand. Look further into things, look at the source of things, you know. It's more like, this is it, and don't you dare question it, which is a red flag. Honestly, it's a red flag. So, in this bibliography, you can find different sections. So there's a section for art, history and culture. Then we have one for witchcraft and paganism, general symbols and magic, Austin Osman Spare, which is a very important person when it comes to sigil magic. Now, if you look at the publishing house of this, it's the Llewellyn publishing house. It's a very known one. So yes, I hope this made sense. These are my points for now, and I hope I could give you a different perspective on research and an insight into how you can approach any kind of research from a more scientific way. Thank you for watching. Follow me on Instagram because I reactivated my Instagram. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will link everyone that does this thinktober challenge down below, as well as all the other resources, and I hope you join me next week. Bye bye. Let's do that again, making the thumbnail.